He was born in the ordinary streets of Brooklyn, the son of a groundskeeper. He had no inheritance, no noble last name, and no formal degree. Yet, by the time Jeffrey Epstein's story reached its final silent chapter, he held the most sensitive information of the global elite in the palm of his hand. How does a man with nothing become the shadow broker for presidents, royalty, and tech titans? How does he acquire a private island, a fleet of jets, and the largest mansion in Manhattan without a visible source of income? This is not a rags to riches story. This is a clinical infiltration, a journey into a world where information is the only real currency and secrets are the ultimate insurance policy. Today, we are opening the complete dossier on Jeffrey Epstein, from his calculated ascent in Brooklyn to the high corridors of global power, and finally, the unexplained anomaly in a Manhattan prison cell that ensured the world would never hear him speak. To understand the man, we have to look at the first lie. In 1974, at just 21 years old, Epstein managed to get a job teaching physics and mathematics at the Dalton School. This is one of the most exclusive private schools in the world. Think about this. Dalton usually only hires PhDs and veteran educators. Epstein hadn't even finished college. So how did he get in? Through a recommendation from a parent who saw something useful in him. It was here in the hallways of Dalton that Epstein learned his most valuable lesson. Proximity is power. He began to mentor the children of Wall Street's elite. He made himself indispensable. He wasn't just a teacher, he was a scout, identifying who held the strings in New York City. By the time he was fired from the school for poor performance, it didn't matter. He had already secured his ticket to the next level, Bear Stearns. At Bear Stearns, Epstein didn't just trade stocks, he traded in human psychology. He rose from a junior assistant to a limited partner in record time. But his real breakthrough came when he met Leslie Wexner, the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret. The relationship between Epstein and Wexner is one of the greatest mysteries in financial history. For reasons never fully explained, Wexner gave Epstein full power of attorney over his entire multi-billion-dollar fortune. Epstein moved into Wexner's 71-room mansion in New York. He began flying Wexner's planes. It was during this era that the Epstein network was born. He stopped looking for investors and started looking for assets. He began building a global web that included names like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Bill Gates. To the public, he was a high-flying financier. In the shadows, he was becoming a repository of secrets, a man who provided favors that could never be repaid with money. Now, we must look at the physical heart of the operation, Little St. James, a private island in the Caribbean that the locals began to call Pedophile Island. But to an intelligence expert, the island looked like a massive data collection center. Visitors were flown in on Epstein's private Boeing 727, the Lolita Express. Once on the island, guests were treated to absolute luxury, far away from the eyes of the law or the media. However, multiple survivors have testified that the island was wired with sophisticated recording equipment, hidden cameras in the bedrooms, microphones in the ceilings. Why? Because a billionaire doesn't need to kidnap people for money, but he might need their compliance. If a world leader or a famous scientist engaged in illegal activities on that island, they no longer belonged to their voters or their companies. They belonged to Jeffrey Epstein. Every guest list was a catalog of potential leverage. Every room was a trap. This wasn't a playground. This was a blackmail factory. While the world focused on the island, another, perhaps more disturbing operation was happening in New Mexico at Zorro Ranch. I want you to visualize this, a massive 10,000 square foot mansion surrounded by nothing but desert. But the real story was underground. Blueprints and witness reports suggest that Epstein was obsessed with seeding the human race with his own DNA, a modern-day version of eugenics. He funded scientists at Harvard and MIT, hosting conferences where the topic wasn't just finance, but the future of the human genome. Why was a financier so obsessed with transhumanism and genetics? Because Epstein didn't just want to control the present elite, he wanted to own the future. He was creating a world where the laws of ethics were replaced by the whims of the ultra-wealthy. In 2005, the shield cracked for the first time. An investigation in Palm Beach, Florida, revealed the extent of his recruitment network. Local police found hundreds of photos of minors in his mansion. The evidence was overwhelming. He was facing life in prison, but then the system protected its own. A non-prosecution agreement was drafted. It was a legal miracle. Epstein was allowed to plead guilty to a much lesser charge, served only 13 months in a private wing of a county jail, and was allowed to leave for 12 hours a day to go to work. Even more shocking, the deal gave immunity to all of his unnamed co-conspirators. This wasn't justice. This was a cleanup operation. Someone somewhere decided that Epstein was too dangerous to be in a regular prison cell. At least, not yet. Fast forward to 2019. The world had changed. The Me Too movement had arrived, and the old shields were no longer working. Epstein was arrested again in New Jersey. This time, the vaults were opened. Safes filled with hard drives and tapes were seized. The panic in the corridors of power was palpable. If Epstein talked, empires would crumble. Then came the morning of August 10, 1919. In the Metropolitan Correctional Facility, one of the most secure federal facilities in the United States, the unthinkable happened. The two guards assigned to watch him both fell asleep for hours. The two cameras facing his cell both malfunctioned at the exact same time. The protocol requiring checks every 30 minutes was ignored. The official cause was ruled a suicide, but the autopsy told a different story. Dr. Michael Baden, one of the world's leading forensic pathologists, noted that Epstein had 3 fractures in his hyoid bone. These fractures are rarely seen in suicides, but common in manual strangulation. The most important witness in the world was gone, and with him, the keys to the archive disappeared. Jeffrey Epstein's story isn't just about one man's crimes. It's a mirror held up to the face of global power. It shows us that there's a level of wealth where the law becomes optional, and where the most valuable currency isn't the dollar, it's the secret. He proved that you could infiltrate the highest levels of society if you knew which doors to wire and which people to compromise. The cell is empty, the island is sold, and the mansion has been gutted. But the questions remain. Who holds the tapes now? Who inherited the insurance policy? The story didn't end on August 10, 2019. It simply went back into the shadows, awaiting the next architect to pick up the blueprints. Keep watching, because the truth doesn't die. It just waits for the tide to go out.